Okay, so this is going to be the last one of Buddhist practices. So we're going to look at something called the 5 moral precepts and the 6 perfections. Now, this really is not complicated stuff at all. It's just remembering it, to be perfectly honest. I know that sounds silly, but it really isn't complicated. So the 5 moral precepts, and there are 5 principles Buddhists try to follow to live ethically and morally. So the key term there is in the red box. And we've talked a lot about meditation and compassion, but these are 5 precepts which are there to actually tell them how to live their lives ethically, morally. Okay, and these are the five things that they have, and they're all to abstain. To abstain from taking life, to abstain from taking what is not freely given, to abstain from misuse of the senses or sexual misconduct, to abstain from wrong speech, to abstain from intoxicants that cloud the mind. So we're going to look at those in just a little bit more detail. So the first precept, it's about it's pretty simple, not harming anything. So that's why lots of Buddhists are vegetarian or vegan, and they won't take on professions like being a butcher. So it's really as simple as that. But it can affect the things that they eat. Okay. Now, the second precept means that Buddhists undertake not to take things that have not been given to them. But it's not just that, because it's also about not manipulating people. It is not exploiting people. So you abstain from taking what is not freely given, and you can extrapolate that into politics. So, for example, if as a politician you stood up and you said you will do something to get people's vote and you don't do it, and you knew you weren't going to do it, then you've actually stolen someone's vote. And so that would go against the second premise as well, the second precept as well. Okay, so it isn't just about sitting there thinking, well, I'm not a thief, I don't steal things. It's actually how we're manipulating people to get what we want, and tricking people to give stuff over or whatever, because therefore it's not freely given. To abstain from misuse of the senses or sexual misconduct. Okay, so that one's pretty self-explanatory. I mean, if you're a monk, you are not going to be having sex anyway, because you're a monk. But if you're not a monk, okay, you're married, then fine. Sex is absolutely fine. They don't have a hang-up about sex whatsoever. They understand that it's part of a loving relationship, and that you have children and all of that. So they don't have a hang-up about sex at all. It's just that it should be used properly, and no misconduct. Because if you have misconduct, that leads to greater suffering. And they're trying to avoid suffering throughout their whole lives. Now, to abstain from wrong speech. So it's not just swearing, but it's also not lying or gossiping about other people. I think all of us will really struggle with some. We all like a good gossip, but it's also on the positive side of stuff like that. It's about being kind, speaking truthfully. Now, there might seem to be some conflict with some of these precepts. What happens if you speak truthfully and somebody else gets hurt? Now, everything comes down to the first precept, which is really to do no harm, not to take life. It's about not doing any harm. And so, for the Buddhists, if you follow that principle, then if there is a conflict, and out of kindness and your motivation is to protect people and not to do harm, then lying is probably going to be okay in that specific situation. And then the fifth precept, not taking alcohol or drugs. And let's face it, that makes sense. If you're going to be meditating, then to take alcohol or drugs which affect your senses, which means you are not in the present, you are unable to concentrate. That goes against everything about Buddhist teaching. About being able to become wise and being able to reach enlightenment. Because if you go back to the meditation sessions that we looked at, meditation is not about emptying your mind. It's not just about sitting there relaxing. Meditation is about concentration, and it's really hard. And you can't do that if you've been taking intoxicants. Now, within Buddhism, one of the things that makes Buddhism different from Christianity and Islam and Sikhism, is maybe not as much as Sikhism, but certainly in Islam and Christianity and Judaism, is that, remember, there is no God. There is no God that is punishing you if you do the wrong thing. So in Christianity, you have the Ten Commandments. So you break the Ten Commandments, then lots of stories about God punishing people and are you going to go to heaven or hell? Remember, there's none of that in Buddhism. You know, so these 5 precepts, it's not so that you avoid about getting punished. It's something that you voluntarily do so that you progress towards enlightenment. Now, if you did lie, steal, take drugs and sexual misconduct, all those kind of things, then you are creating bad karma, remember, and then your next life, you're going to have suffering in this life, absolutely. And then when you die in this life and you're reborn again, then your next life is going to be worse because you've got lots of bad karma. So it's within your own interest to follow the 5 precepts. So you're not doing it because you're scared of a vengeful God gonna punish you. You're doing it because it's your benefit. It's out of your benefit. And think about rules. We always sort of think, oh, am I keeping the rules? What I like about this quote here, okay, we just keep on working. We are patient with ourselves, and on it goes. Little by little, our life comes more into alignment with the wisdom that gives rise to the precepts. As our minds get clearer and clearer, it's not even a matter of breaking or maintaining the precepts. Automatically, they are maintained. So it's saying you get into the point where you just automatically keep the precepts, not because you've always got them in your head thinking, I mustn't do that, and I mustn't take drugs, and I mustn't. It becomes a natural part of your life to be kind. It becomes a natural part of your life to be honest. It's a natural part of your life not to harm. So you're not actually, in one sense, keeping the precepts because you're scared of breaking them. You're keeping the precepts because that is, little by little, your life has become an embodiment of those precepts. So, like I said before, the root precept is the first one, not to cause harm. The others were expressions of this when you actually look back at it. So, and I've talked all about the karma as well. So here you've got some activities, again, really simple stuff. Which of the 5 more do you think being most Buddhists in the West would find hardest to follow? Pretty much all of them, probably. The 5 moral precepts should be treated as strict rules that Buddhists should always obey. Do you agree? Give reasons for your answer. That'll be an interesting one, because if you want good karma, then you need to obey it. Absolutely. But if you look at this quote here, it's not a question about obeying. It's a question, really. What we should be doing is organizing our life through meditation, through wisdom, through reflection. Our lives, like I say, an embodiment of the 5 precepts. We're not obeying them as such. Our lives just follow them automatically. We are automatically kind. We are kind not because we're obeying the 5 precepts, but we're kind because we're kind. So now I'm going to move on to the 6 perfections. Again, this is not complicated stuff. Okay, 6 qualities of virtues that Mahayana, remember, Buddhists try to develop in order to live as Bodhisattva. Now, remember, Bodhisattva are those people who are enlightened, but they don't go to Nirvana, they come back to guide other people to enlightenment. And so these are the 6 perfections which they talk about Bodhisattvas having. So they will try and develop these 6 perfections. Generosity, morality, patience, energy, meditation, wisdom. All, so 1 to 5 are really leading to number 6 about wisdom. Okay, so generosity, again, nothing complicated here with any of this stuff whatsoever. There are 3 main types of giving. The first, material goods such as food, clothes and money, give immediate relief. Second, give protection from fear. They should help somebody if they're in trouble or in a situation that's making them afraid. The third is to give the Dharma, the teaching. This is a gift that helps the recipient to help themselves. Now, there's a hierarchy there. You know, if you are starving, then you're not going to be taking on the teachings, the Buddha's teachings. If you're living in fear, you need protection, you are not going to be taking on the Buddha's teachings. So it's meeting people's needs, and it's patience, isn't it? It's the long old haul. You know, if someone's starving, it's not about teaching them the Dharma, it's about meeting their immediate needs. Then you've got morality, which is really going to be the 5 precepts that we were talking about just now. Now, patience. Now, a bodhisattva embodies patience, expressed through tolerance and endurance. It's because it's about learning to endure the suffering that comes your way, and that's why lots of Buddhist monks they do tend to take on activities which are quite difficult, physically difficult, either through fasting, or there are some monks, I think they're in Japan, who there were some mountains in Japan where they basically run around these mountains. It's almost like a marathon, and they do it on a daily basis, but they do it for months and months on end. And it's almost this sense of being patient and enduring suffering that comes your way. Now, clearly, not many Buddhists would do that, would search out the suffering so that they can endure it. They want to avoid it. But it's this idea that actually we should be patient with ourselves. And when you are patient with yourself, you are actually practicing compassion towards yourself as well. You're not beating yourself up by saying you're not perfect, you're not perfect. So we need to be compassionate towards ourselves, and that is being patient. And when we are patient with other people, we are showing compassion to other people as well. Energy, the fourth perfection, cultivation of mental energy. Remember, when we tried meditation, some of you found it quite easy, some of you really struggled with it. Even those who found it easy, we only did it for about 5-10 minutes. If you're doing it for half an hour, a few hours, you need a lot of mental energy, because it's not about falling asleep, remember, and daydreaming. It's about concentration. So it's developing that mental energy. And then you have meditation. The fifth perfection is considered meditation. And it's through meditation we become to understand the nature of reality, we become to understand our own nature, understand the nature of suffering, and we be able to cultivate the 5 precepts. And so meditation is incredibly important, and all of that leads to wisdom. Should do anyway. So the idea is to become more wise. Now, it's interesting, wisdom here is not a collection of knowledge. There's a massive difference between being knowledgeable and having wisdom. And the two don't necessarily go hand in hand. I have met lots of people who are very knowledgeable, but they're not very wise. And so one of the reasons Buddhists would say they're probably not very wise is because they don't actually reflect on that knowledge. They don't and their reflection would be meditation. They don't actually meditate and reflect, and they learn from that knowledge. They can just reel out fact after fact after fact. Well, that's the waste of time if you don't know how to respond to it, and if you don't know what to do with that information in the appropriate way. So meditation enables you to reflect on all of those things, and hopefully leads you to become a wiser person. So here we've got the little old story from Buddhism, and sort of like which parts of the 6 perfections does this show? A group of people were travelling through a burning hot desert. 2 of them strayed away from the others and got lost. As they walked on, they became desperate to find water and were eventually delighted to come across a well. They both rushed over to it. The first man to arrive drank his fill of the beautiful clear water. He drank so much he could no longer move and sank down on the ground beside the well. The second man looked at the well, turned around, and then went off in search of his fellow travellers to guide them back to the well. That sounds like a really nice story which explains what a bodhisattva is doing. He's the guy that goes back, he's the person that goes back and gets the other travellers and guides them to the well. So you can either do it on the bodhisattva level. If you're not a bodhisattva, you could just do it on an ordinary human Buddhist level, in guiding other people. So it's not just about, you're not being selfish. It's not all about you and yourself. It's about guiding other people to the well. So really, as you can see here, going down here, that's the assessment guidance. That is it. That's the Buddhist practices. Okay, make some notes and all that. Like I say, this is not complicated stuff by any stretch of the imagination. Okay, but you might, you get a question, what are the 6 perfections? or name 2 of the 6 perfections, or you might have a multiple choice which is asking you out of a choice of 4 which one of these is a perfection. So you need to know what the perfections are in the 5 precepts, but they're not complicated by any stretch of the imagination. Okay.